Okay, we are here today at Surprise, Arizona during the Rangers spring training game with the White Sox. And we have a special guest here today on the Pursue the Pennant channel. Go ahead, introduce yourself, Josh, and tell us your current position.
All right, thanks, Mike. My name is Josh Boyd. I'm one of the assistant general managers here for the Texas Rangers, and I oversee our pro, amateur, and Pacific Rim scouting departments.
Cool. Now, Josh has played thousands of Dynasty League Baseball by Pursue the Pennant. Josh, how did you first find out about the game? Just tell us that first.
Oh, I remember very vividly the first time seeing the ad in the back of, I think it was one of the Sporting News annual. Pretty sure it had Darryl Strawberry on the cover, and it had to be 1985, 86, somewhere in there. And it was a year before I was in high school, and it was one of those things. I think, if I remember correctly, it was a full-page ad, and it just immediately drew my attention to thinking, like, I need to play this game. It was the detail of, just kind of the simulation of it really drew my attention in. I was, back in those days, I couldn't wait to see box scores the next day, and I watched as much as I could, which was a lot more challenging to watch as much baseball as you can now. But, I was just infatuated with stats and baseball cards and anything and everything I could find about players. So seeing that Pursue the Pennant ad that day, I probably ordered it within a week, or had my mom order it for me, and then a bunch of friends and I started playing, and probably for at least the next decade, played, like you said, thousands and thousands of games, and rarely went any stretch of time without playing games.
So tell us what you learned by playing the game, and maybe even some things that helped you in your career later on that you gained from that experience of playing.
Yeah, I mean, certainly just the knowledge of the major league players. So, I mean, and really everybody from the best players to players that, I don't remember how many at-bats you had to have a card, but just the knowledge.
About like 25, 40, around that area.
And some of those guys were so exciting because it was prospects and
right.
the lesser-known players. But just one, the knowledge of the player pool, and then I think the things that even at the time I didn't really realize until we played more and more, just the platoon splits and verse left, verse right. I was always so excited every year to see defensive ratings and arm grades, and then so I think that in lineup construction and all these things that, as somebody who could just play as many games I want, I didn't, you had so much freedom to make a lineup the way you would want to make it, not just the way maybe it traditionally was in Major League Baseball. So just those little things that I don't think I wasn't thinking of it like I was Bill James and sabermetrician kind of level, but you just did them naturally when you realize all these different things about how matchups worked, and why wouldn't you want somebody who gets on base hitting higher in the lineup, and all that stuff. So I think those things primarily just were a big influence on how I thought about the game. The other thing that is kind of, for me specifically going into journalism and then eventually working for Baseball America, is that I all of a sudden had tons of content and I would actually write articles to write about the games that I played. So, whether it was some of the leagues I was in, the leagues that I was in, I would write newsletters kind of summing up a bunch of games or the league as a whole. And like I said, it generated content that had a lot of detail because of the type
and
of
you
game.
later went on to work for Baseball America, yes, and writing things for them. And we talked a little bit earlier, Josh actually wrote some of the back of the baseball card info. So that's great stuff. So is there any specific features maybe that really stood out, like you had mentioned, like the range ratings and how interesting those are, and you mentioned the platoon splits and just seeing like those lefty righty breakdowns? at that age just kind of grasping, oh yeah, you know, you can learn how to platoon and lineups and that type of thing, and you start learning those things.
Yeah, the platoon thing I think is the platoon matchups, and then so I'll use this example of I remember Joe Carter being, you know, such a good player overall. He'd put up 35 and 35 bombs and 100 plus RBIs, but I always remember, like, you know, if you faced a ton of righties, he'd be 250 against righties, didn't walk much, and he struck out, and you'd be like, this guy should be dominant. But I didn't understand at the time, really. I couldn't understand like why that was happening. But again, like I said, like almost naturally you'd go, well, then you make some adjustments to your lineup, and then again you'd see the value of just on base percentage and and some of those things. But when a guy didn't have walks on his card, it was such a difference in the quality or the production of that player.
The cards themselves you learn a lot from, right? Because you see there's no walks on the cards, and bam, that hits you. Okay, what's his on base percentage versus righties and lefties, right?
Absolutely.
And a lot of times people, you know, they look at the range of numbers, like how many home run numbers he has on his home run range, and of course the power ratings. Is there anything you remember that you look for more than anything else? I know you mentioned on base and slugging. Anything that you mentioned that you look for in building a team or building a lineup as far as the different ratings?
Yeah, defense for sure. You know, obviously you get
range rating
crushed on trying to run any kind of team out there that had poor range. Those were hits, right? And,
right.
And I think that shows up if you know as you watch Major League games. Obviously, the impact of defense is significant. So that probably stands out as much as anything. I mean, pitcher walks and strikeouts for sure. You know, strikeouts being obviously not quite what they were back then, or as prominent as they are in the game today. But still, you know, the guys who punched out a lot of guys were really impactful and kind of change your team. I think bullpen construction was the other one with that just I think same thing. You just try to get guys that were, whether it was matchups, and of course no three batter minimum back then.
Right.
You just, you know, you didn't. I don't think we necessarily had to warm guys up or anything, at least
with the board version, right?
With the board version, yeah. Right. So just those things. You have a lot of freedom to have matchups and. So I think those are some of the things.
So then later on, you went with some of your friends and joined the EJMA league, right? So that introduced a whole nother perspective, right? In terms of now you're the GM, right? So now you're team building. So how was that experience in terms of the similarity to actual Major League Baseball? I think it was either Doug that I talked to that said, as far as trading, I think he had related that you felt that trading was very similar in the EJMA to actually being a Major League Baseball GM.
There are definite similarities in it, and I don't know if I'm sure that probably surprised Doug when I said that, and it would surprise me if I told myself that 20 years ago. But so much of it comes down to relationships, to obviously the roster construction. You're a rebuilding team. Are you going for it? Whatever your personal preferences are on your roster. But it starts with a phone call or nowadays a text and those kind of things. So and then you try to work through like how you value a player and what it means to your team. So like at the core of it all, it's very similar. We have no concerns about all the other things that we have to take into account with you're talking about actual human beings. In our case, it makes everything different. The Major League payroll, the fan base, all those things that we didn't have to factor in, but at the core of it, there's so many similarities about it. I think I was so interested in prospects at the time that I probably wasn't a great GM, just because I was like constantly trying to get the next hot prospect
and more
maybe
focused on the prospects than the team
than sometimes
for
winning.
now, right?
Yeah, yeah. but that was part of it. I absolutely loved that, and part of why I went to Baseball America. And same thing. I learned so much from PTP.
So as an EJMA general manager, you were trying to build a team from the ground up with rookies, and then hold on to that team as a potential dynasty, right?
Always. Yes, absolutely. You wanted to be
Hold them for the long
exciting
term.
to be the first one to know about somebody, and
Right.
of course, back then it was a lot more challenging to find out about players that were up and coming and off the radar. Where now there's so many resources, but
Right.
yeah.
And anything else you can think of in terms of the GM side that you learned from playing simulation games?
Yeah, I think
Team building.
Definitely. I mean, again, we didn't, you didn't have contracts and things
Right.
that we factored in, but still, you were thinking about I think the age, even though we didn't have a salary cap or a payroll or anything like that, you still would factor in, hey, my team is getting old, or my team is whatever the roster construction.
Right.
You were still thinking about that, and I think that, as evidenced by the fact that EJMA is going on almost 4 decades now. I mean, even back then, I feel like a lot of us did have a long-term view of things in mind. So you were thinking about, hey, my team's getting old, I need to turn it over, and I'm gonna, if it's prospect related, you're trying to build something for a longer haul usually than. At least I wasn't usually just about 1 year. So yeah, like I said, it's not like apples to apples on the comparison there of things, but in some way you were thinking about, all right, if I go all in on this year, what am I going to do next after that? And so those are the.
So the EGMA basically had a pick draft as opposed to like a rotisserie draft where you had bidding and had contracts, right? Because with the SNBL, we have contracts. So we're actually dealing with contracts. Yeah. We extend them long term, and you can have guaranteed contracts. So it even adds more into the GM experience in terms of
that would have been good.
The contracts. Yeah, right. The contracts are a lot of fun, and we actually have a new contracts page in the online version that actually gives you all the options of if you can extend them, if their contract's running out. So it tells you all of that. So
that's pretty cool.
Great. Well, thank you for being on the interview, Josh. Really enjoyed this and hearing your experience with Dynasty League Baseball powered by Pursue the Pennant. Yeah. And good luck to you this season, and maybe another championship, right?
Yes, well, that's the plan. That's the goal, and I appreciate your time, Mike, and appreciate all the years of joy and everything that PTP brought to my life. And like I said, it was very, very prevalent in my household for such a long time, and I still have in my office. I actually have the 3 red, white, and blue 10-sided dice.
There you go.
With all my many other special memories and artifacts and everything.
That's great. That's great.
So thank you very much.
Good to hear. Thank you again, Josh.
Yeah.